42.
Investment advisory services offered through Retirement Wealth Advisors, Inc.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com.
It is 7:37. Let's get an update on the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time and Jim Telemonti.
I-57 is a mess right now at 127th Street, where wreck has the left lane blocked. There was debris across the roadway. Some of this has cleared, but it's still jammed. Similarly to 127th, it's a 38-minute trip from I-80 to the merge, outbound 16 minutes. On alternate, Bishop Ford runs just 13 minutes from 8094 to the ride. Inbound Eisenhower traffic slows from Ashland into the Burns Circle. It's a 1 or 2 minute delay. Inbound Stevenson, it's tight. Pulaski to Kedzie and Western to the Ryan, 30 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. I-80 westbound before Briggs, there's a crash reported. 8094 eastbound, it's heavy with road work around Broadway. It's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonti on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. In our 1 hour heating and air conditioning weather center, sunshine mixing with clouds, high 59 today. Currently 43. Next news coming up at 8. Breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas, best beans, best roast, best coffee.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Larry Kudlow on This Week with Clinton Foundation Donor Zero on Sunday had this to say about what kind of snapback we're looking at as states begin to reopen. We're going to see V-shaped curve? U-shaped?
What do you got? VU?
Maybe L-shaped or the swoosh recovery?
I don't want to sugarcoat it because I think the numbers for May are going to be also very difficult numbers. It's going to take a while for the reopening to have an impact. So there's that. The second point is, inside the numbers, there's a glimmer of hope. I don't want to downplay the numbers, mind you, but there's a glimmer of hope. We had about 80% of it was furloughs and temporary layoffs. That, by the way, doesn't assure that you'll go back to a job, but it suggests strongly that the cord between the worker and the business is still intact. I think hopefully that has something to do with the $3 trillion of assistance, including the payroll protection plan. You know, all in on this, we're probably including the Federal Reserve's operations and the budget and fiscal work that President Trump has led with the bipartisan congressional votes. We probably had, George, $9 trillion worth of assistance going to 175 million individuals. It's a remarkable plan to attempt to stabilize a very difficult situation.
There are some who are more rosy than Larry. I mean, he's an optimist, but he's certainly right about the May numbers. But one Danish economist, Lars Christensen, who has a good blog called Market Monetarist, he argues that when Americans vote in November, unemployment will be back below 6%.
Really?
More than cut in half from the number it is now, and that's going to be going up by the end of May, I suspect, as most do. He just is like long-lasting effects on supply-side shock are just rare. This isn't a demand side, it's a supply-side shock, and so those can be corrected more quickly. That's one argument. So this is all in the context of the lockdowners versus the reopeners, and I'm sorry that there seem to be two distinct camps, but they're due. And we're seeing it sort of play out in real time, state by state. But it is interesting to note some of the give being provided by those you would think would be in the lockdowner camp, flacking for big state Democrat politicians like Newsom and Pritzker and Cuomo and Whitmer. Connor Friedersdorf, writing at The Atlantic, take the shutdown skeptics seriously. He writes, if we knew that a broadly effective COVID-19 treatment was imminent or that a working vaccine was months away, minimizing infections through social distancing until that moment would be the right course. At the other extreme, if we will never have an effective treatment or vaccine, and most everyone will get infected eventually, then the costs of social distancing are untenable. We don't know where we sit on that spectrum. So we cannot know what the best way forward is, even if we place the highest possible value on preserving life and protecting the vulnerable. The uncertainty means, at the very least, that Americans should carefully consider the potential costs of prolonged shutdowns, lest they cause more deaths or harm to the vulnerable than they spare. Well, that's a fairly reasonable approach that mirrors the opinion of most of those arguing for a responsible phased-in reopening, one which is occurring in 24 states, at least. So the question is that an honest, is Connor Friedersdorf, a man of the left, generally speaking, is that someone being an honest broker? Or is that someone recognizing that the lockdowners' grip is weakening, even in states that are inclined to be supportive of the lockdown and bust politicians, like, say, Illinois? We see it weakening here. We see revolt occurring on the hustings. And so, understanding the politics of this, because unfortunately, you take everyone at face value by your own, with your own peril. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Matthew Boose. He is a Mount Vernon Fellow of the Center for American Greatness and staff writer and weekly columnist at the Conservative Institute. Matt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. So you write in a piece at amgreatness.com, recent piece, that there is the COVID-19 politicization, people using the virus, most notably to try to hang it on Trump to get him de-elected in November, but also in a policy sense. And I wonder how you interpret some of the pronouncements coming from quarters like Connor Friedersdorf in The Atlantic. Do you take that at face value, or do you suggest that it's just a recognition they need to modulate a little bit to stay consistent with where the zeitgeist is?
Yeah, I think there is an understanding that the position of lockdown forever is not a tenable or sustainable position. And they're acknowledging that there's, a growing popular backlash against that. And I mean, I guess you could, you can take that person in good faith, but I think they're just kind of, they're recognizing that keeping the economy locked down, for an indefinite period of time is not a sensible position, and that people who advocate an opening are not, they're not operating in bad faith either. They're not like bad people who just want to see other people, be exposed to a deadly virus. This is like a very, serious and destructive thing. And
but
I mean,
the arbitrariness of it all. I mean, then you have our
Yeah.
mayor yesterday saying, we're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything. We're going to have social distancing for the foreseeable future until there's a vaccine. She's not going to open up our lakefront.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, the arbitrariness is personally, that's something that gets to me. I mean, the difference between what they're saying and what they're doing is profound, right? I mean, they say that they're going by science and that this is all about, staying safe and following expert advice, and we're going to be rational about this. And then you look at the substance of their decisions, and it's really just very arbitrary. It's capricious. It seems to mostly just go by whatever is their whim. I mean, not to mention, many of them are not following their own rules. They're placing their residents under a different set of rules, and you can't govern people that way. Arbitrary government isn't good government. You need to there needs to be a justification if you're going to do something this drastic.
Although there does seem to be a significant willingness to bend the knee when when it's demanded by politicians. I mean, looking at approval numbers and support for these shutdown policies.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, how was Pritzker doing in the polls?
Well, Majority of Illinois approves of what he's doing.
Yeah, well, how do you feel about that?
Well,
I think they should take another vote after this because now he's pushing back our peak date again, now to mid-June.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but so here's
oh my goodness.
So here's the thing, Matt. The devil doesn't come dressed as evil; he comes dressed as a false good. And so they don't come dressed as we're going to infringe upon your rights and marginalize things that are important to you, like your faith. We're going to save lives. Everything is save lives. That's the mantra. That's the mantra by which they used to justify all sorts of encroachments that may or may not recede once the virus does.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, they're saying that this is all about a public good and that this is just about safety, but it's for a lot of public officials it's turned into a power grab. I mean, I think the other week I heard Pritzker say something about a guy who was defying the lockdown. I think it was like a Republican lawmaker.
Right. And
he had this really like self-righteous outburst. He said the guy is an enemy of science and reason, and
he's going to kill people.
He's going to kill people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absurd.
Well, you wrote.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you wrote an article about Andrew Cuomo's performance art isn't really governance. America seems to have fallen in love with him, though. Oh
my God, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's performance art is what Andrew Cuomo is doing. I mean, I won't use the words that come to mind. But he's a politician, he's a sleazy guy, and really the only reason his ratings have been through the roof is because the lapdog press is just pumping the guy up
every day.
I mean, if he was a Republican, it would be a totally different story. Not to mention New York has far more deaths than any other state. I mean, outside of the tri-state. This has kind of been a thing. I mean, it has not overwhelmed the country the way they said it would. And, by any objective, sound reckoning of how Cuomo is done, he hasn't done a good job at all. But they're just based on his sort of demeanor or his presentation, because he's being, tough love or whatever. He's going by science. And it's just, he's not doing a good job.
He is Matt Boose. He's a Mount Vernon Fellow of the Center for American Greatness and staff writer and weekly columnist at the Conservative Institute. Matt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Cool.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
You've all probably heard of asbestos and know that it's dangerous. You may also know exposure to asbestos is the only known cause of mesothelioma, a deadly cancer. People who were exposed to asbestos decades ago are being diagnosed to this day with mesothelioma. That's because it can take as many as 30 or even 50 years to develop. But did you also know there is money to pay victims of asbestos exposure from years ago? An estimated $30 billion is available to help compensate victims and their families. If you or a member of your family have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be able to receive some of this money without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Get a free legal review today. Call Sokolov Law at 1-800-972-3229. That number again, 1-800-972-3229. 1-800-972-3229. Call today, 1-800-972-3229.
Hey, most of us have been spending a lot more time at home recently, and perhaps you've noticed it's time to upgrade your sheets and pillows. I'm going to be doing that because I actually did take a look at Peyton's sheets the other day and got to upgrade those. So this is what you do. You go to mypillow.com. Right now they have buy one, get one free offers on pretty much everything. Pillows, sheets. The Giza cotton sheets are awesome. Duvets and more, plus the roll and go anywhere pillow.